Don't miss The Marvels in theaters on November 10th and see where the Marvel stories all began when you watch Captain Marvel, WandaVision, and Miss Marvel, only on Disney+. Plans starting at $7.99.
Hello and welcome to a new podcast, The Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello and welcome to The Paddock and the Pavilion. Today's guest is David Hunter, the Chief Executive Officer of Fakenham Racecourse. We have reached episode 17, and after next week's cricketing show, with current Warwickshire player Oliver Hannon-Dolby, we will be taking a short break until we return in December in the lead up to Christmas. Don't forget to rate and reverse and tell your friends about the show. Let's find out more from David Hunter. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion, David.
Well, very nice to be speaking to you. I'm here in Norfolk. You're down the road, if not in Newmarket, close to Newmarket, and great to be your guest on today's Paddock and Pavilion on an in-between grey and sunny Monday morning.
Well, you're a bit nearer to the last guest I spoke to, Richard Friedman in Sydney, although he said the weather down under was quite miserable there, so not much change there. So we've gone from the Melbourne Cup to National Hunt Racing. And thank you very much for being on the show, David. Today we're going to speak about your racing life, about Fakenham, and about the future. To start with, what's life been like for a National Hunt Racing CEO since March?
Well, it's been no different from probably everybody else in the country, if not the world. Very different and very strange. But so we raced on the 13th of March, same day as Cheltenham Gold Cup Day. It was the last time we raced in the spring. And then, like everybody else, we went into lockdown. We missed 3 race meetings at the end of the season, Easter Monday, early May meeting, and Ladies' Day at the end of May. We then had an extended racing break, spring and all through the summer and into the autumn. And we started again on the 16th of October and have had 2 meetings since we started again, both behind closed doors, which have gone very well. A huge amount of work has gone into getting to there, like every racecourse has, and lots of hoops to jump through with to satisfy all of the quite right high criteria and legislation and processes and protocols to put on behind doors racing. But we've got there in the end, and that is the really important thing. But the time in between, very difficult. I mean, we lost racing. We had no non-race day activities. I think all of us racing, really large assets that we like to use for as many different income-generating activities and functions as possible. We also run a touring caravan and camping site at Fakenham Racecourse, which my predecessor started many, many years ago. And we were able to open that on the 4th of July, along with all other sort of hospitality businesses, and that has been extremely busy. The requirement and the demand for people having holidays at home in this country this summer, the last part of summer, has been huge. So we're lucky we're in a lovely part of the country, close to some fabulous coast up on the Norfolk sea there, and we did very well with extremely good number of people who came and stayed with us. So we got a well-needed financial shot in the arm from our guests coming and staying on the caravan site.
Well, that's a very thorough answer there. I was going to ask you a couple of questions about how many meetings you lost and how it's gone so far. And I noticed even at the meetings you've had the National Hunt Champion jockey Brian Hughes there, and winners for top trainers John Joe O'Neill, David Pipe and Donald McCain as well.
We have. Since we started racing again, I've been very pleased at the quality of horses and jockeys that we've had here, and the excitement of the racing. It's gone very well. I mean, as a small racecourse company, we've made the decision, everybody's hurting in this COVID stressed period, and the income coming in through to racing for prize money through the levy board and our media rights and things has taken a bit of a knock. But we as a racecourse company have made the decision, certainly for the end of this year and hopefully going into next year, to put in 75% of what we as a company would have put into prize money for the remaining fixtures. So our prize money, I think, is taken a bit of a drop, but it's still fairly high, and we're committing £22,500 of our own company money to prize money for every fixture for the foreseeable future, and that does mean that we've got some competitive races that possibly have got higher prize money than some other race courses in the country, and if that means we're getting a decent number of runners and a good quality number of runners and riders, that's what we're wanting to do, because we want it to be competitive racing, even though we haven't got the all-important members of the public here.
Well, that all sounds good. Can we now just go back to the beginning of your sort of racing background, and what is your first racing memory?
My first racing memory is in Somerset. As a young boy, I should think about 5 or 6, going with my parents to point on high up on the Mendip Hills, a place called Nedge, which is pretty barren, and it was pouring with rain, and it was our local hunt, and therefore the local point pouring with rain. I took refuge in the back of my parents' Land Rover, and I was intrigued when a policeman stood in a pile of dog sick. And I think he stood in that. I don't think he cared. He was probably as cold as I was, but that was my first. I can't remember anything about horses, but I remember looking out of the back of the car and seeing a pile of dog sick and a policeman standing in it. So that was many years ago. As a soldier, I rode in a couple of point-to-points when I was teaching cadets at Sandhurst as an officer instructor. Followed a bit in racing and other bits and pieces, but really it came about that I started here at Fakenham because I moved to Norfolk to work with horses, not with race horses, when I left the army in 1993, having been a soldier for 10 years, and I did a lot with horses. Likewise, it was every type of horse except race horses. So that's how I ended up running Fakenham.
So can you your first day going to the races?
First day at a proper professional race meeting, yes, that would be at Wincanton in about, I should think that would have been in the late 70s at Wincanton racecourse. And I also, that was a cold wintry day, I think, up on the hill at Wincanton. So I suppose my early thoughts were always that racing was in fairly cold and wet places, tending to be on tops of hills. That attitude has changed since. So those are my first memories of racing.
Now you're certainly a jack of all trades at Fakenham. You're the chief executive officer, clerk of the course, and you're in charge of media and marketing. How long have you been doing that role?
What, just the media and marketing?
Well, all of the role. No.
Well, I started here I started at the racecourse in 1998, and immediately, took on all of those roles. There were only 6 race meetings in a year when I started, and it was a smaller team. But we built it up a little bit more, and more of those things have sort of come into play. And sort of marketing and media, that then became a specialist job for a colleague some years ago. And sadly, the onset of COVID has meant that job is now no longer around. So I'm sort of nursemaiding it in the immediate time, because obviously there is nothing to market at the moment within racing because we aren't able to take any paying guests. But I always have been the chief executive and clerk of the course, the 2 roles knocked into one from day one when I started here. And, it's for a smaller course, that's an achievable thing to do. For bigger courses, those 2 roles probably need to be split into 2 separate jobs.
And for listeners, some of our listeners around the world, can you tell us a little bit about Fakenham Racecourse?
I can. So it's a small national hunt racecourse in North Norfolk, 15 miles off the North Norfolk coast, and we race in the traditional racing period, so from mid-October, and we do squeeze through until the end of May or beginning of June. And racing in North Norfolk, national hunt racing, jump racing, started in 1884, not on this site, but over towards King's Lynn, a place called East Winch. And it was started as a private race club and an offshoot of the West Norfolk Foxhounds. It then moved in 1905 to the current site here at Fakenham. And it used to only have Easter Monday and Whit Sunday as 2 race meetings a year, but that's increased a little bit. We now have 12 to 13 fixtures a year. We're no longer is it part of the West Norfolk Foxhounds. It's no longer a private club, and my directors here at Fakenham don't have a financial interest in the racecourse company. They give their time and effort and support to my small staff and myself to make everything run. But we're a small, happy course. Everybody is prepared to roll up their arms and get involved in every aspect of what needs to be done, whether it's racing or non-racing. We have a tremendous number of annual members. We have about 950 annual members, sadly none of whom are able to come and watch the racing at the moment. And since 1884, we've had unbroken royal patronage, first with the Prince of Wales in 1884, and then in due course to the Queen, and now the Prince of Wales is the patron of Fakenham. So it's a very nice link to have. Sandringham is only 50 miles down the road for us. So it's a small, friendly, rural national hunt course that is purely here to put jump racing on in North Norfolk.
Well said, and certainly when I've ever been to Fakenham, I can confirm how friendly everyone is at the course. And the Queen Mother also visited Fakenham.
She did indeed. I'm looking at a picture in my office of the Queen Mother in her 100th year with me in the background. Lovely, lovely lady. It was a great privilege when she came racing. The sadness was that I had to call the racing off earlier in the morning because there was frost in the ground. But she was up and ready to go, so she came anyway. She visited a group of lunch guests who were having a charity lunch in aid of a local blind charity, and then she had a few select few. There were the Queen Mother, and there were 13 others. There were 14 of us having lunch with her that day, and it was a very, very special day. It was just such a shame we didn't have horses running, and if we had horses running, she would have had a horse of her own running, but it wasn't to be. But yes, really lovely lady.
And another star that came to the course back in 2016 was the gold medal winning Olympic cyclist Victoria Pendleton. That must have been quite a big day for the course as well.
Yes, it was. So Victoria Pendleton then was doing her challenge to make the change from to riding a horse. Her aim was to ride at the in the Fox Hunters at the Cheltenham Festival later on in March, and she came to us in February. It was one of her last sort of opportunities to qualify for the Fox Hunters. She did remarkably well. Sadly, she fell off at the fence right in front of the stands, which was a great shame. She wasn't injured, thank goodness, and she did go on and rode at the Cheltenham Festival. But she is a tremendous sports person and lady. She did hugely well of making the change from riding a bicycle to riding a racehorse. I think she realised how jolly tough it was. As I say, it's a great shame she parted company when she was here on that day.
But just to remember, Victoria did finish 5th in the Fox Hunters Chase at the Cheltenham Festival. So all her hard work and dedication came through in the end.
Absolutely. It all paid off, and a huge respect for her for having achieved that. And I think she's still, I don't know if she's still riding in point to points, but I'm pretty sure she's still riding out and enjoying the buzz of sitting on racehorses and schooling them. So well done her.
Now, on this show, we often have the favourites round. So I'm just going to ask you a few favourites. So have you got a favourite horse and why?
The favourite horse, he's sadly no longer with us, but the favourite horse that I've had dealings with was a little horse called Cool Roxy, who won 11 races at Fakenham. He holds the record for the most number of races won at Fakenham by any horse in the entire well over 100-year history of Fakenham. And really great little horse, only about 15.2. Most of those rides ridden by Chris Honor, his jockey then. Chris now has just taken out a license to train. And having finished his racing career, Kuroxy went off and did a bit of low-level dressage and eventing and other bits and pieces. and he's a great little horse. He came and he opened the bar. He walked into the building and walked through red tape to open the bar named after him on a race day a few years ago. And then I think about 18 months, 2 years ago, sadly, he was lost when he got a nasty bout of colic, which is a great shame.
A bit like one of those racehorse celebrities again, like Red Rum and Sub-Zero, who I was talking about in last week's podcast. Now, moving on to who would be your favourite jockey and why?
Who would be my favourite jockey? Gosh, well, I have, for all of my time to date in racing, AP McCoy was already established, and I think I've been very lucky to have run race courses in the era of AP. So, tremendous sportsman, dedication like you've never seen it, a gentleman. AP would have to be up there with the top lot.
Now, as a CEO of a National Hunt racecourse, what would be your favourite other racecourse?
Difficult one, but it would probably be Cheltenham, but not over the Gold Cup period. My wife and I really enjoy going down to Cheltenham this time of year for the November meeting. Sadly, we're not going this year, but the November meeting of Cheltenham would be my other favourite place to be going racing.
And what about your favourite other sport?
Favourite other sports? I am an avid rugby fan and will always go and watch at least two or three, or really all of the rugby internationals that happen at Twickenham. I'll go and watch those. My son was a very good rugby player when he was at school, and I played a bit of rugby, not very well. So yes, rugby union is my big passion.
And since the first lockdown in March, have you learnt any new hobbies? Have you started to play an instrument, anything like that?
No, I haven't started to play an instrument. My wife and I do quite a lot of running and cycling and other things. So we have continued to run and cycle and do a bit more. We run with our lurcher dogs, and so we're both quite competitive on that front and do keep ourselves pretty fit along those lines. We also had, for virtually all of lockdown, we had 7 adults. So between my wife and I, we've got 6 adult children, and we had 7 of us living at home for the most of lockdown, which was a lot of fun. Also jolly expensive on the food and booze bills, but it was great fun. And actually, you say about singing, we did. 4 of us put together an appallingly bad but very amusing to do rendition of Queen's "I Want to Break Free" in week 2 of lockdown. So there is somewhere on YouTube. There's an amusing bit of some of us possibly in drag doing a video clip and singing along to that.
Oh, that sounds something good to look out for on YouTube. Looking to the future, what are the biggest challenges at the moment for Fakenham Racecourse, and are you worried about the future of the racecourse?
So the big challenges are to continue to ensure that we're able to put the racing on, to be well prepared and fully prepared to accept and welcome back members of the public just as soon as we can. And I'm not worried about the racecourse. No, we're in a good position. If we're still in the same position, as we go into autumn next year, then that's going to be very difficult for everybody, not just in racing, but throughout the economy of the country, if not the world. So I'm not going to dwindle on that. Otherwise, it would be far too depressing. But no, we're in a good position. We've only just started this season, so I'm looking forward to the season as it unfolds. It always brings up its own challenges. It brings up its highlights and some low points, and one just has to take those on the chin and keep running with them. So we're in a good position. I've got a great team that work with me here. I'm very lucky about that. And we are as best placed as anybody could be to ride out the COVID storm.
Well, that's very good news to hear. Now, when we finally get out of the pandemic COVID, how do you think that racing can reach out to a wider audience?
Well, I think that racing does a pretty good job at the moment. We can never sit on our laurels and think, have we got everywhere? But actually, it is a sport that reaches far and wide. I just think that what we need to be continually doing is trying to enlighten that a younger generation, come along and give it a go, see if you like it. We should never say no about something until we've given it a chance, and that's not an easy thing to do. We have offered to younger groups, whether it's be young farmers or universities or colleges or whatever it is, to come racing. And it's been difficult for them to commit. That is the big problem, is that I think that we those of us who are running race meetings need a commitment from whatever group or whatever it is who's going to come, that they will come. And I'm here talking about younger people, as I say, at either university or young farmers, so we know how we're going to come. But it's a real difficult issue amongst younger generation to make any commitment to anything. They like to keep their diaries. Well, they don't have diaries. That's why they can't commit. But they never say, yes, that's what's happening. It's almost that they have to keep everything open until the last minute. So, that can be frustrating as a father, and it can be just as frustrating when running a business.
I asked that question as well because I read somewhere, and I know we might be quite a few years away from this, but you were posing the question whether there could be racing on the beach at Norfolk like there is in Laytown in Ireland.
Yeah, that is something that before COVID came along, it's something that leaked out into the press a little bit. It's an ambition and something that I am looking at. I'd love to try and achieve it. I don't know if it'll ever be possible because of the idiosyncratic, the relief of the Norfolk beaches and things, and finding the correct beach and making sure it's safe and all that kind of stuff. But it's an aspiration I've had. It's all on hold at the moment until we get through COVID, and then hopefully once we're through COVID, it might be something that we can then look at again. But something like that would be a tremendous way of I think bringing a new public into racing and seeing how what it's like. I've been to Laytown. I should have gone to Laytown again this year, but we've had to call it off. And I'm hopefully next year going to go to some of the other beach races in France and Spain to see how they do it. But I think that if you could you've got a beach racing day, you've got Laytown in France. If we could find somewhere to have one in England, have one that's in Wales, and have one in a day's racing on the beach in Scotland, you've got a 4 nations thing there. You could then have France. You've got 5 nations. Sound like my rugby enthusiasm coming through?
Yeah, definitely. It sounds a very interesting concept. I didn't realise that there was beach racing in Spain and France.
Yes, there is. Yep. Haven't been to them yet, but yes, there are.
Because at Laytown they get very big crowds, don't they?
They do. They get pretty big crowds, and it was tremendous atmosphere at Laytown. I would really recommend to anybody to go over and sample the fun of racing on the beach at Laytown. It was great fun, and as I say, we would have been there this year, but we'll be back there next year.
And isn't that run once a year in September?
It is once a year in September. The date and the time of the racing is all a little bit of a movable feast, depending on the tide and the tides and the levels of the tide and when is most suitable. But it's around that time, so it would have been 2nd of September this year. But yeah, it's a good crack, and I'd love to find. Might even be that North Norfolk isn't the right place for it. If I can't find the right sort of, you've got to find really safe, consistent sand and ground for it, and then you have, an element of easily accessible infrastructure to put things up that need to be done. There need to be the full cooperation of British Horse Racing Authority to see whether it can happen. You can't have the same level of stabling and other things. It would be more like a point-to-point on the beach in as far as the infrastructure is there. But, got to give it a go.
Well, the best of luck with that. That sounds like a very interesting idea that hopefully one day will come to fruition. Thank you very much for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion, and hope all goes well in the future for Fakenham Racecourse.
Well, Stephen, nice to speak to you. Look forward to catching up with you in the flesh later on in the year or next year. And been a real pleasure to speak to you. And I hope your followers have got a little bit of fun out of our chat today. I've certainly enjoyed speaking with you.
I'm sure they will. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to The Paddock and the Pavilion. You can download the show on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher and Spotify. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Pad and Pad.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.